Senator Marco Rubio challenged Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with her own statistics, leaving her entirely speechless. "How many cases did you actually resolve, Congresswoman?" he asked, and the inquiry lingered in the air of room 219 inside the Hart Senate office building like a suspended breath. 3 heavy seconds ticked by as Ocasio-Cortez remained seated at the witness desk. Her palms were pressed flat against the polished oak, her lips parted, yet no sound emerged. The quiet in the room was so profound that the sharp, rhythmic clicks of camera shutters from the press area echoed clearly. Just 14 hours prior, before the session commenced, she had walked in with absolute certainty that this was a battle she would easily win. The session initiated at 9:14 in the morning, featuring Senator Marco Rubio already vocalizing. There was zero introductory monologue, zero procedural preamble. He was mid-interrogation before the broadcast lenses had completed focusing. "Representative, prior to initiating the official segment of today's testimony, I wish to register for the record that a household within your jurisdiction, the Dominguez family from Jackson Heights, submitted a formal grievance to this panel regarding the fallout of existing sanctuary area guidelines," he stated. "I will revisit their situation, but initially, I desire you to verify for the record your openly declared stance that incarceration financing must be slashed and diverted toward local community options. Is that a factual synopsis of your platforms?" The viewing area was completely full, offering only standing capacity near the rear boundary. 3 separate television networks broadcast the feed in real time. Every individual who entered Chamber 219 that day arrived because they firmly understood what they were preparing to witness, or at least they assumed so. The Congresswoman shifted forward in her seat, gripping the microphone base with both hands. She sported a pale jacket layered over a deep-colored shirt. Her countenance conveyed the intense drive of an individual who had dedicated the preceding week to media appearances, characterizing this proceeding as mere political drama. She was ready, she was self-assured, and she possessed zero interest in providing brief, single-word replies. "Senator, that serves as a factual synopsis, and I value the chance to elaborate upon it," she noted. "The existing incarceration structure drains American citizens of over $3 billion yearly to uphold a framework that fractures households, penalizes destitution, and yields consequences that every single independent analysis has proven are far less successful than local community options." She stated they were spending excessive funds simply to be more callous, adding, "That is not a legislative stance I reached haphazardly. It represents the culmination of prolonged efforts alongside migrant groups, support coalitions, and the residents in my district who endure the fallout of a strict enforcement doctrine every single day." The audience reacted with visible agreements from the progressive flank, a low rumble of endorsement that the security officer quieted with a stern glare. Then, the representative offered a remark the senator had not requested. "And Senator, I desire that this panel will scrutinize all of our histories with equal measure." She offered a grin that was calculated rather than welcoming. "I believe the panel would gain from a comprehensive perspective." The senator absorbed the statement. His writing instrument paused for a fraction of a second above his paper. Then he jotted a note and progressed. "I appreciate that precision, Representative. I wish to guarantee I comprehend your stance exactly. Therefore, it is your statement today that you have reliably campaigned for slashing enforcement financing. Is that accurate? A simple affirmative or negative?" "Affirmative, and I take pride in that history, Senator." Rubio offered a nod. He accessed a beige folder situated on his right side and extracted a solitary piece of parchment. "In that case, I wish to submit into the official file document number 1, a correspondence originating from your personal staff, dated 14 months prior, explicitly asking for an expansion in ICE operational capital, specifically for your jurisdiction. The chamber's atmosphere altered not with loud breaths, but something more muted, the noise of 200 individuals simultaneously reassessing the situation. The correspondence remained displayed on the overhead projector for 12 ticks before the Congresswoman reacted. Within those 12 ticks, every single journalist in the media section commenced typing. Her head of staff, positioned 2 rows behind her, halted his coffee consumption mid-drink and placed the mug down without glancing away. The representative did not panic. She had navigated difficult environments previously. She had fielded aggressive inquiries from panel leaders desiring her downfall, and still exited possessing the viral video clip of the afternoon. She understood exactly how to pivot. Senator, that correspondence discussed local security assets within the framework of a distinct, localized issue brought forward by residents. It was absolutely not an appeal for expulsion capital. It was not an approval of the strict enforcement methodology I have dedicated my profession to fighting against. Nuance is critical, and I desire this panel to recognize the disparity between a specific resident service appeal and a broad legislative stance. The execution was accurate and rehearsed. The audience breathed out. The senator opted not to debate the pivot. He simply elevated the correspondence and recited a solitary sentence from page 2, paragraph 3. Your staff asked for capital for, and I am citing verbatim, ICE enforcement and removal operations relative to surging caseloads within the 14th Congressional District. Is that the exact phrasing of your staff, Congresswoman? Senator, my staff manages thousands of resident demands. That phrasing indicates a distinct logistical situation. It absolutely does not embody my overarching political priorities. I comprehend. I appreciate it, the senator stated, placing the correspondence aside. Presently, while your staff was secretly asking for supplemental enforcement assets, I wish to reveal a detail regarding the household I referenced previously. The Dominguez family from Jackson Heights. During that exact same month your staff dispatched this correspondence, the Dominguez family reached out to your resident assistance channel, asking for aid with an enforcement-linked dilemma. They were informed, and I pull this from the panel's official log, that 0 extra assets were accessible for their specific predicament. He allowed the contradiction to settle. Your staff was demanding assets with one hand, while informing a household residing in your personal jurisdiction that such assets were unavailable with the opposite hand. He continued, the Dominguez family possesses 3 youngsters enrolled in state education. They have resided in Jackson Heights for 9 solid years. They contribute taxes. They obey the statutes. And when they phoned their representative for aid, an individual told them no. The senator stared straight at the testimony desk, bypassing her massive notes and the broadcasting lenses. 14,000 households remain languishing on the housing queue within your jurisdiction, right at this moment, Representative. That is not merely a digit. That equates to 14,000 suppers where a mother and a father must gaze at their offspring and state, "We are still attempting." It functioned not as a query, but as a firm declaration. And inside living spaces spanning the nation, citizens observing on their screens nodded without consciously realizing their agreement. The Congresswoman's defensive pivot arrived swiftly. Senator, the fundamental origin of every single problem you're bringing up is severe federal undercapitalization. Whenever the legislature, whenever this institution declines to properly finance local initiatives, resident assistance, migrant tribunals, and lawful defense, the consequence is exactly what you are currently outlining. The remedy is financial injection, not criminal enforcement. The audience reacted favorably. It proved to be a formidable tactic. The senator absorbed the blow. He scribbled a note upon his paper and refrained from rebutting. I value that viewpoint, Representative. I would currently like to summon our primary testifier, an individual who resides within your jurisdiction and can discuss the federal backing issue you just brought up directly. Her facial expression shifted, displaying recognition rather than panic. The preceding itinerary she had studied contained 3 testifiers. This particular identity had not appeared on it until the prior night. Elena Vargas strolled toward the testimony desk in the manner a person enters a sanctuary unhurriedly, possessing the sort of intentional carriage that originates from desiring respect, inside a space where you recognize you do not inherently fit. She was 61 years of age. She sported a dark blue gown she had pressed that very morning, alongside a tiny golden crucifix resting on a necklace that reflected the ceiling illumination when she took her seat. Her fingers shook marginally as she tweaked the sound equipment, and she stabilized them by forcing her palms entirely flat onto the desk before vocalizing. The audience became completely silent, not because an authority commanded it, but simply because something regarding the manner this individual presented herself required it. The senator managed the prelude. Elena Vargas, proprietor of La Cocina de Elena, a Dominican eatery located on Southern Boulevard within the Bronx, operating for 22 years. Lawful migrant hailing from the Dominican Republic. Naturalized United States citizen for 15 years. Mother to 3, grandmother to 4. Ms. Vargas, using your personal phrasing, please express to the panel what motivated you to submit a grievance to this institution. Vargas communicated with caution. Her inflection was noticeable, yet her English remained pristine. She had rehearsed this not alongside attorneys or public relations instructors, but inside her cooking space at 2 o'clock in the darkness, with her offspring sitting opposite the surface, paying attention and instructing her to reduce her speed. I adore my local area. I raised my offspring there. I established my enterprise there. Every single morning I unlock my eatery at 5:30 a.m., and I brew coffee for the exact same individuals who have been visiting me for 20 years. I recognize their identities. I recognize their offspring. I recognize who has fallen ill, who recently lost employment, and who requires a serving of nourishment but lacks the funds to compensate for it. That represents my true community. She paused, gathered her composure, and then resumed. Over the preceding 3 years, circumstances have altered in manners that damage the individuals who were already present. The offspring of my workers sit inside instructional rooms containing 42 pupils and a solitary instructor. The daughter of my plate washer is currently in the 3rd grade, and she remains incapable of reading at the proper grade standard simply because her instructor manages 42 youngsters and lacks adequate hours during the daytime. The urgent care center at Lincoln Hospital, the spouse of my chef, traveled there, suffering from chest agony last October, and languished for 11 hours. 11 hours resting in a synthetic seat suffering from chest agony. And my relative Rosario. She languished for 9 years to enter this nation the proper method. 9 years navigating documents. 9 years submitting payments. 9 years executing everything they demanded of her, and currently, she observes individuals arriving possessing nothing, 0 documents, 0 protocols, 0 waiting, and instantly acquiring benefits that she was instructed she needed to achieve. That viewpoint is not opposed to migrants. I am a migrant myself. That is simply questioning why the regulations pertain to specific individuals while ignoring others. She halted, inhaled a breath, and then delivered the statement that fundamentally transformed the proceeding. I cast my ballot in favor of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez on 2 occasions. I trusted her when she claimed she would battle for households exactly like mine. Consequently, I phoned her office. I phoned 11 separate times over 2 years. I possess the telephone record right on my mobile device. I am able to display it to you right now. The representative leaned inward. Her vocalization was welcoming, intimate, stretching across the chamber. Elena, am I permitted to refer to you as Elena? I listen to you and your lived reality holds importance for me. The hurdles you're outlining represent the precise reasons I have battled so fiercely to secure expanded community funding. We inhabit a shared community. We possess a shared background, and I desire you to understand that your voice. Vargas stared directly at her, not harboring fury, but harboring something significantly worse, profound letdown that had eroded into sheer patience. Representative, you listen to me today solely because recording devices are present. I have phoned your staff 11 times. 11. The chamber consumed that phrase in the exact manner that dirt consumes precipitation following a severe dry spell, totally and entirely at once. The senator posed a single inquiry. Miss Vargas, what occurred following your 8th phone call? Vargas gestured affirmatively, acting as though she had been anticipating exactly this. During the 8th phone call, a youthful male working in the representative's office informed me they remained incapable of assisting with my specific problem. He stated I needed to reach out to an entity titled the Pueblo Adelante Community Alliance. He stated they were capable of assisting me. Consequently, I phoned them. They informed me they did not manage my specific category of problem, but they were capable of linking me with alternative agencies. I replied, I do not require alternative agencies. I require my elected representative to answer the telephone. She paused once more. Subsequently, my neighbor, he functions within the municipal financial department, he informed me that Pueblo Adelante had obtained a $2.3 million federal community enhancement subsidy, and that the representative's staff actively assisted in funneling that subsidy to them. The paradigm shift was immediate. Every single individual situated in the audience perceived it. This ceased to be a narrative regarding a lawmaker who neglected to answer the telephone. This evolved into a narrative regarding a lawmaker whose staff diverted residents toward a politically aligned entity. While that exact entity obtained millions in financial backing, the lawmaker had personally helped orchestrate. The senator gazed at Elena Vargas, and subsequently he gazed directly into the broadcasting lens. He avoided looking at the representative. He avoided looking at the panel. He stared at the lens, addressing the 23 million citizens observing from their residential spaces. Mrs. Vargas executed everything flawlessly. She arrived here lawfully. She established an enterprise. She contributes taxes. She phoned her representative 11 separate times, and the bureaucracy informed her she failed to be a priority. He paused for a single second. If Mrs. Vargas fails to be a priority, then exactly who is? The inquiry struck home in every single living space across the nation. Every single observer past the age of 50 who had ever dialed a bureaucratic department and found themselves placed on a holding line. Every single taxpayer who had ever been informed their specific problem failed to be a current priority. They listened to the senator ask the exact inquiry they had been silently asking for decades. The representative's lead assistant was actively messaging behind her, two thumbs operating rapidly. The representative's jaw locked in a manner the recording devices had never previously documented. She lacked any rebuttal for Vargas's account because providing an answer would necessitate confessing that 11 phone calls remained ignored, and the Pueblo Adelante complication had struck from a trajectory her preparation squad had utterly failed to anticipate. The senator expressed gratitude to Vargas. The reverence present in his vocalization was not theatrical. He refrained from summarizing what she had articulated. He simply allowed it to linger. Subsequently, the representative leaned into her sound equipment. Her vocalization was highly regulated, piercing. Senator, I desire to address this, and upon finishing, I possess several inquiries regarding your personal history that I believe this panel deserves to listen to. She accessed her personal folder. She arrived ready. She possessed opposition data, and she fully planned to deploy it. Given that we are scrutinizing histories today, Senator, let us scrutinize yours. She refrained from waiting for authorization. She extracted a typed document and elevated it so the lens could capture the official heading. Communications occurring between Senator Marco Rubio's staff and the GEO Group, one of the most massive corporate immigration detention center administrators within the nation. This constitutes a public document filed alongside the Senate Ethics Committee. The GEO Group's Political Action Committee contributed $50,000 to your election fund, Senator. This correspondence from your staff enabled an accelerated permit assessment for a center expansion located in South Florida. You desire to discuss who answers the telephone? Let us discuss who answers your telephone. Because the moment the GEO Group phoned, an individual answered on the very first ring. The audience fractured. One half exploded in noise. And examine your voting history, Senator. Community Development Block grants the exact same subsidies that finance entities serving households precisely like Elena's. You selected no. Emergency Housing Assistance Act households slumbering inside refugees within your personal state. You selected no. Lawful Immigration Avenue expansion. You co-sponsored the legislation that slashed avenues by 40%. The representative found her stride rapid, rhythmic, reconstructing the persona that had generated a widespread national audience. The tempo felt hazardous, and the audience could perceive it. The senator waited patiently until she concluded. 2 seconds of quietness. Not 5, not 3. Exactly 2. He refrained from detaching his spectacles. He refrained from glancing downward. He refrained from inhaling a breath the sound equipment could capture. He waited in the exact manner a person waits for vehicles to pass prior to traversing a roadway. The representative happens to be accurate regarding those selections. Every single one of them. I have executed selections within this institution that I would execute differently today. She happens to also be accurate that the GEO Group's PAC contributed to my election fund. That constitutes public data. The center permit adhered to standard assessment protocols. Absolutely no accelerated processing occurred. Then he leaned inward, lacking fury, displaying clarity. However, I desire to highlight something specific. Representative, you recently utilized 2 minutes discussing my history and I permitted you to finish. Do you comprehend why? Because every single second you utilize discussing my voting record serves as a second, you avoid having to answer the core inquiry of why Elena Vargas phoned your staff 11 times and absolutely nobody picked up the telephone. The audience became utterly silent. Not the fractured response resulting from the representative's counteroffensive. Absolute silence. Because every single individual situated in the chamber comprehended precisely what had just occurred. Her counteroffensive failed to represent power. It represented dodging. And the senator had labeled it verbally. My guardians arrived in this nation possessing nothing. They phoned their lawmakers' staff exactly one time, and an individual answered. That represents everything this is regarding. An individual answering the telephone. The representative started to reply, yet the senator had already shifted. I desire to submit document 3 into the official log. He pushed a dossier horizontally across the surface. The title page remained viewable to the lens. It served as an initiative assessment originating from the representative's personal district facility, showcasing a local employment project she had championed. A triumphant narrative, vocational training, employment securement metrics, local neighborhood enhancement. She gazed at the dossier and subsequently at the senator. Bewilderment flashed across her countenance before she managed to suppress it. For what reason would he present data that caused her to appear successful? This serves as a formidable project, Representative. 600 individuals educated, 400 secured in professions. Your staff directed this project directly? Is that accurate? She analyzed the dossier for 3 seconds prior to replying. She remained suspicious of the inquiry, yet the data was authentic, the outcomes were authentic, and they belonged to her. Affirmative. The Bronx Workforce Pathways Initiative represented one of the most triumphant local enhancement projects in the district's past. I remain proud regarding what our staff achieved. You definitely should be. In what manner was it financed? Federal local enhancement subsidies? Municipal equalizing capital? A local alliance featuring 3 neighborhood entities? Specifically, Representative, exactly which financial line inside your district facility distribution financed the local alliance aspect? The representative consulted alongside her assistant. A hushed conversation. The assistant turned to the addendum of the dossier, traced a digit downward on the paper, and halted. The local alliance had been financed by diverting capital away from the resident assistance finances, the exact same finances that compensated the personnel who answered telephones. The exact same personnel who ought to have received Elena Vargas's phone calls. Her triumphant narrative had been constructed by stripping funds from the facility designed to assist individuals resembling Vargas. The project that produced news articles, media statements, and election talking points had been compensated using the financial line that ought to have compensated the individual who answered the telephone when Elena Vargas phoned for the 8th time, and the 9th time, and the 10th time, and the 11th time. She had not selected between beneficial and harmful. She had selected between observable and hidden. Between the 400 individuals whose employment securements would feature inside a circular, and the numerous thousands of individuals whose ignored phone calls would fail to feature anywhere whatsoever. The senator refrained from summarizing. He inquired, therefore, the 400 employment securements were financed by diverting resident assistance capital. Exactly how many of the 400 individuals secured through this project were concurrently residents who possessed unresolved cases lingering with your staff? I would require an examination of the exact statistics regarding that intersection, Senator. Acceptable enough. Let us progress. The inquiries commenced abbreviating. Representative, I desire to submit the CBO's financial assessment regarding the immigration legislative structure you co-sponsored, the 10-year forecasted expense. You have referenced the Congressional Budget Office as a definitive resource on a minimum of 14 separate occasions during media statements. Do you validate their systematic approach? Affirmative or negative? Generally affirmative. I appreciate it. Utilizing the CBO's statistics, which you recently confirmed, exactly which specific initiatives within your jurisdiction would you terminate to finance this plan? She listed income origins, taxation restructuring, diverting capital from military spending, corporate baseline taxation tweaks. The senator waited until she concluded. Representative, I inquired which specific initiatives you would terminate. You have listed income origins that fail to exist yet. There happen to be 14,000 households stuck on your jurisdiction's housing queue at this exact moment, not subsequent to taxation restructuring passing. At this exact moment, they require a solution that operates today. He recited a solitary sentence extracted from a resident's correspondence. Not Vargas. An individual the chamber had never previously heard regarding and would never subsequently forget. Maria Chen, Queens, lawful migrant hailing from Taiwan. She languished 7 years attempting to achieve United States naturalization. She attended every single meeting. She submitted every single document. She successfully passed every single examination. She submitted every single payment. She executed absolutely everything this nation demanded of her for 7 consecutive years, lacking any complaint. And the moment she reached out to your staff seeking aid regarding a bureaucratic lag that had unjustly tacked 11 extra months onto her wait, your personnel answered her via writing. I am reciting from the correspondence log submitted to this panel. This issue fails to be a current priority for the representative's office at this present time. 7 words, Representative, directed at a woman who sacrificed 7 years of her existence for this nation. He submitted document 4, resident correspondence statistics originating from her facility, secured via a routine legislative disclosure demand. The data matrix spanned 18 months of requests, categorized by subject. Immigration-linked requests experienced the absolute lowest response metric of any subject. Inferior to housing, inferior to medical care, inferior to sound grievances, inferior to vehicle parking. The disparity was not slight, it proved to be systemic. It proved to be a deliberate selection. She started to reply regarding the statistics. Those metrics failed to indicate. She halted. For half a solitary second, her gaze lowered to the paper resting before her. She recommenced. Those metrics demand proper background, Senator. The vocalization returned. The tempo recovered. However, the audience had perceived it. Half a solitary second where the rhythm shattered. Half a solitary second where the mechanism faltered. It represented the initial fracture, minor enough that she attempted to mask it, massive enough that 23 million citizens observed it. The senator observed it as well. He refrained from pushing, he stored it for later. Whenever my mother encountered a dilemma, she phoned her lawmaker's staff, and an individual answered. That fails to be a Republican concern or a Democratic concern. That simply is the core occupation. The senator declared a 5-minute break. As she extended her hand toward her hydration, he tacked on a single statement, bordering on an afterthought. Upon returning, I possess exactly one inquiry. Merely one. Throughout the break, the narrative continued accelerating within the corridor outside Chamber 219. Her media director and her legislative assistant were conversing loudly over one another, pressing their spines against the stone barrier. One continued verifying her device. The remaining one continued shaking his cranium. A female seated in the audience, mid-60s, sporting a blue sweater, reading spectacles resting upon her brow, phoned her offspring and stated, "You absolutely must observe this upon returning home. The entire event right from the start." A Capitol security agent shifted the velvet barrier because the corridor crowd had expanded twofold since the proceeding initiated. When the proceeding recommenced, she appeared more stable. She had strategized alongside her squad. Her carriage was realigned, her jaw locked securely. She resembled a female who had absorbed a strike and resolved to absorb an additional one while remaining upright. However, the audience had witnessed the microfracture, and 23 million citizens residing at home retained the memory of the falter. They comprehended what was approaching. They merely failed to comprehend the exact method. The senator's inflection altered. It grew softer, bordering on tender. The manner a person addresses an individual when the final result is permanently settled, and the sole remaining mystery remains exactly how much damage will occur. Representative, I desire to recite a brief segment extracted from a public gathering you hosted during April 14th. A resident questioned you straightly regarding what would transpire concerning their relative's unresolved expulsion dilemma. Your reply, and I am reciting straight from the authorized transcript your personal staff distributed, was exactly as follows. I will personally ensure your household remains shielded. That constitutes my pledge to you, not my personnel's pledge, mine. He elevated his gaze from the parchment. Did you intervene on a personal level? My staff executed suitable protocols regarding that specific file, Senator. Exactly what protocols, specifically? I would require a thorough review of the entire case dossier to supply you with an exact reply. I possess the case dossier right here. Your staff dispatched a solitary email, merely one. Dispatched to a department you have openly labeled as corrupt and aggressively commanded be dismantled. You dispatched a solitary email to a department you fundamentally fail to believe ought to exist, and you informed that household you were personally battling for them. Every single individual seated in the audience comprehended what had recently been articulated. She generated a pledge while being recorded to a household that relied upon her, and subsequently her staff dispatched a solitary email to a department she desired dismantled, considering the task finished. Furthermore, the entity you diverted Elena Vargas toward Pueblo Adelante. They were concurrently included as a primary asset partner within that exact email. The exact same entity. The exact same diversion. An entirely distinct household. An entirely distinct district. An entirely distinct calendar year? Identical reply. We remain incapable of assisting you directly. However, here exists a person who remains capable. And that specific person acquired $2.3 million in federal subsidy capital that your staff aggressively assisted in steering. The senator halted. Upon speaking anew, his vocalization was significantly softer than it had been all morning. Elena Vargas phoned 11 times. Maria Chen languished 7 years. The household originating from your public gathering relied upon a pledge you generated while recording devices operated. And every single one of the three was pointed directly toward the identical entrance. An entity that accepted the funds, yet remained incapable of rectifying the dilemma. The paradigm was presently observable to every single individual inside the chamber. This ceased to be regarding one single ignored phone call. This ceased to be regarding one single household. This represented a system. Residents encountering enforcement-linked dilemmas were being diverted toward a politically aligned entity that acquired millions in subsidies, while those exact residents' dilemmas remained permanently unrectified. The proceeding ceased to be regarding carelessness. It evolved into a matter regarding biased assistance. A matter regarding a facility that actively determined exactly who merited assistance and exactly who merely merited a diversion. She started to reply. Her vocalization still possessed passion. Authentic passion, the exact conviction that transformed her into the most youthful female ever secured a seat in Congress. Every single representative within Congress manages thousands of complex cases, and the notion that a minuscule assortment of instances, the senator posed the final inquiry. 7 words. He refrained from elevating his vocalization. He refrained from leaning inward. He posed it in the exact manner a medical professional poses an inquiry when they already possess the diagnosis and simply require the sufferer to vocalize it themselves. Just how many cases did you actually resolve? The chamber became motionless. Her assistant pushed a piece of parchment horizontally across the surface. It shifted exactly 3 inches, departing one palm, arriving at the opposite. She gazed downward at it. Her eyes scanned the exact digit. She had utterly failed to witness it prior to this exact moment. Her personnel had extracted it throughout the break strictly because they recognized this specific inquiry was approaching, and presently, she was analyzing it for the very first instance live before 23 million citizens. She commenced speaking. The phrase initiated possessing energy, the exact identical tempo that had transformed her into a widespread national persona. The rhythm that millions of citizens had observed and distributed and venerated. Every single facility possesses a completion metric that embodies the sheer complexity of the dilemmas that the vocalization altered, not steadily, not a subtle fading that the crowd could have potentially missed. A brutal switch resembling an individual severing an electrical cord. The highly passionate, rhythmic, heavily syncopated tempo that successfully constructed her widespread national audience forcefully locked into a lifeless, mechanical tone. The verbiage continued flowing, yet the melody vanished. The passion failed to dwindle, it violently ceased. During one phrase, she remained battling. During the subsequent phrase, she remained reciting, resembling an individual reading text from a prompter that they fundamentally failed to trust anymore. The phrase entirely exhausted its oxygen in the exact manner a vehicle exhausts its fuel while traversing a highway. It simply ceased moving altogether. 3 seconds of sheer quietness. Subsequently, she inhaled a breath. She elevated her jaw. She attempted once more. Senator, I desire to be explicit that my facility's resident assistance history. 3 words proceeded, and the vocalization had almost recovered. The former rhythm attempting to ignite. The audience leaned inward. Her assistant leaned inward. For exactly 1 solitary heartbeat, it appeared as though the mechanism might truly reignite. Then it completely ceased again. Simply because she gazed downward toward the specific digit printed upon the parchment exactly 1 additional time, and whatever reality she witnessed there rendered the subsequent word entirely unachievable. Her mouth sealed. Both of her hands retreated from the sound equipment, returning to her lap. Her eyes dropped heavily toward the surface. Not theatrically, not featuring a pronounced emotional snap. Specifically, the exact manner an individual places down a container they suddenly recognize remains empty. Behind her position, one assistant glanced at her device and subsequently glanced upward again, lacking any knowledge regarding what text to transmit. A secondary assistant positioned her palm firmly onto her personal brow and abandoned it resting there. Inside the audience, absolutely nobody vocalized. A female situated in the third seating row nodded with slow deliberation. Not an arrogant gesture, a gesture of verification. The gesture of an individual who fundamentally possessed the knowledge that this remained factual and had merely been languishing for the remainder of the nation to finally witness it. The senator vocalized into the sheer quietness. I possess zero additional inquiries for this specific testifier. I desire to express gratitude toward Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez for her extensive testimony today. The reverence present inside his vocalization proved authentic. That represented exactly what rendered it so completely devastating. He remained absolutely not ridiculing her. He remained absolutely not rejoicing. He remained acknowledging the reality that she had entered this chamber, fiercely trusting every single word she articulated, and that the official statistics simply failed to sustain it. He shifted his attention toward the panel. 11 phone calls, 7 years, 1 solitary pledge generated while being recorded, and $2.3 million funneled toward an entity that ultimately failed to rectify one single individual's dilemma. He halted. He permitted every single word to land securely. That fails to be a broken mechanism that collapsed, colleagues. That represents a highly functional mechanism operating exactly as it was intentionally constructed. It simply failed to be constructed for Elena Vargas. It represented the most potent phrase Marco Rubio articulated during the entirety of the proceeding. It failed to be an inquiry. It represented an absolute judgment. And every single individual observing comprehended it represented the truth. I would desire to strongly suggest that this specific panel issue official demands for complete resident correspondent statistics originating from every single representative who co-sponsored this specific legislation. I would concurrently desire to demand that the panel closely analyze the subsidy distribution protocol regarding Pueblo Adelante and any additional comparable entities highlighted during today's sworn testimony. The magnitude regarding what transpired inside Chamber 219 instantly expanded past one single representative. The formal inquiry had merely initiated. By that specific evening, the recorded video existed universally. The segment that achieved massive viral status failed to be the senator's concluding inquiry. It failed to be the dossiers or the fiscal statistics or the fiery corporate counteroffensive. It merely proved to be Elena Vargas staring straight into the recording lens, her vocalization completely solid, her fingers completely devoid of shaking. I phoned 11 times. 4 precise words, 11 million watches prior to midnight arriving. Within Columbus, Ohio, a pensioned instructor named Diane Mercer absorbed the complete proceeding using her residential television, featuring the audio elevated significantly enough that her adjacent neighbor could easily perceive it penetrating the partition. She rested inside the exact same seat where she had meticulously observed the historic Watergate proceedings 50 years prior. When the broadcast concluded, her spouse delivered her a mug of warm beverage and inquired exactly what she believed regarding the event. She refrained from averting her gaze from the glowing screen. That female situated at the desk? That exactly resembles me. I have been attempting to phone them for 3 solid years and absolutely nobody ever answers. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entirely failed to materialize upon MSNBC that specific evening. She terminated the arrangement. She subsequently terminated 2 additional planned media sessions scheduled for that specific week. 0 brief social posts. 0 uploaded image stories. For the very initial instance throughout her entire political profession, her widespread digital accounts remained entirely motionless for 48 consecutive hours. That sheer quietness articulated significantly more than any crafted press document ever could. Subsequently, the political comrades commenced withdrawing. A media analyst upon MSNBC, absolutely not a detractor, but rather an individual who had fiercely shielded her in public for numerous years, stated directly on live broadcast, I firmly believe the representative desperately requires to resolve the inquiries regarding Pueblo Adelante prior to us potentially engaging in a wider dialogue regarding her legislative goals. Whenever the specific individuals who historically shielded you commence aggressively posing the exact same inquiries as the individuals who actively combat you, the political conflict is permanently finished. Within a mere 72 hours, 3 major co-sponsors of the controversial legislation silently retracted their identities from the document. 0 public media events, 0 distributed press documents. Merely identities evaporating rapidly from a doomed proposal that abruptly possessed absolutely nobody willing to shield it while recording devices operated. A frantic journalist intercepted the senator in the corridor located just outside his personal suite, eagerly inquiring precisely how he felt regarding the proceeding's outcome. The senator absolutely refused to decrease his walking velocity. 11 phone calls, 2 solitary answers, and $2.3 million directed toward an entity that ultimately failed to assist one single human being. If that completely fails to be corruption, it remains at the absolute very least a massive betrayal targeting every single individual who cast a ballot for her. He continued traversing the corridor. Pueblo Adelante, the local entity that Vargas had been uselessly diverted toward the specific one that eagerly acquired $2.3 million in federal subsidy capital, distributed a highly condensed public document late that specific evening. We openly embrace any thorough assessment regarding our neighborhood projects and alliances, the statement declared. The subsequent morning, the panel's leading member formally demanded the entity's complete subsidy request documents and exhaustive spending logs. Absolutely nobody located in Washington actually comprehended exactly what those buried logs would ultimately reveal, but a powerful entity was finally investigating the matter now. Inside La Cocina de Elena, situated upon Southern Boulevard during the morning directly following the explosive proceeding, a habitual client entered seeking morning coffee and gently inquired whether Elena had witnessed herself upon the television broadcast. She affirmed with a yes. He subsequently inquired exactly what would transpire next. Elena Vargas retrieved a ceramic coffee mug, thoroughly scrubbed the surface using her opposite hand, and gazed upward toward the compact television securely attached directly above the payment register, the exact location where the explosive proceeding had broadcasted the preceding day. I am preparing to phone them once more. And during this specific instance, an individual might actually answer, she stated. The formal proceeding was officially concluded. The massive inquiries that had forcibly torn open were just commencing.